Hey, it's me, Michael, again from BackToTheFutureTrading.com, and I wanted to show you we finally worked out some of the programming bugs from our Tachyon solar cycle indicator. It's one of the components of our alpha package, and the alpha package is pretty cool because it uses indicators that are literally not of this world. So because we are WD Gann subscribers, we believe that there is a flow of energy coming into and out from our world, our planet. There's a vibrational tide, if you will, a high tide and a low tide of energy. And that energy affects people in demonstrable, measurable ways via the electric field and the magnetic field of our Earth, and to some extent the gravitational field. And so what the alpha program does is it tracks sources of this energy coming into and out from our planet and marks those max and min points on charts. One of the biggest influencers happens to be our sun. And the sun, let's fill it in here, is quite fascinating in its cycles. Meaning, if you look really close on the surface of the sun, there are a series of spots. So if we blow up an area of the sun, kind of like this, and you looked at it with a special telescope, there would be, let me put it in there, you could look and actually count these little black pimples kind of up here. And scientists actually track the number of spots. When you look really close, you'll see that these spots are miles high coronal ejections of energy that again come to Earth and then influence our environmental conditions in measurable correlative ways. Well, when you track those sunspots over time, there's a vibrational pattern, just like Gann predicted, this idea of natural law driving markets. Well, the very last cycle, we're almost at the end of this one, but I want you to see that we spent quite a bit of time tracking and going through the data to find out when the exact dates of the last two reversals were. On this chart, you'll see that I've actually got a signal here and then another one over here where the last min and max were. And what we do, based on, again, vibrational theory, our time theory, oscillatory theory, all of the methods that we've developed over the last 10 years, we know and understand that this space of time is important. The geometry of this, the width, now actually tells us things about the future until the next cycle gets here. Well, if we project this distance forward into the future, right? If we project it forward from the last cycle high or a low, excuse me, and then subdivide it, we can do some pretty cool stuff. Now, if you take a look right here, I want you to see what those subdivisions do. Okay, so these are those gaps projected forward in time, and now we subdivide those gaps into smaller and smaller pieces. In the case of this tool, if you have it at home, I'm using a 21 value for the splits of that future gap, that projected gap. And when I project that gap 21 times and oscillate the polarity, you see some interesting reactions at these dates. And so we have one at October 19th. We'll go ahead and enable my arrow here to draw. We had another split polarity reversal at November 21st. Then we had a pattern 4, a lower low inverted polarity selling pressure signal, which went the other way as expected. Then we had another signal on January 24th, another signal at February 26th, it looks like. And now a pattern 5 at March 29th. Now, pattern 5s and pattern 4s generally behave the same way, meaning when you see this arrow here, even though it's a red signal, it tends to go the other way. And so here we were expecting it to pull back and go down. When it doesn't, it disrupts the natural order of things. And what this shows me is somebody was intentionally pushing price higher. The natural order of here, it's like holding your breath underwater and then coming out from underwater after a long time and going, inhaling. But here, they held their breath even longer and even longer and even longer. So this move in the E-mini S&P and stock market in general was manufactured. It was pressurized. Somebody held the market's head underwater longer than it had to be. And you can almost see that in the height of the candles, the very small forced march up. When we got to April 30th, there's a natural rhythm, right? It pulls back down to the 120. We close underneath it, freak a few people out. And then this signal here on May 31st is again a natural inhalation. There's an exhale of energy and then that next micro pull upwards. That positive energy ebbs into the world. Well, it was interesting to me because we have a signal from July 3rd. And if I look at the chart, there's some pretty cool stuff here that we can get some information about that the banks have sort of left behind. I don't think they know that there are a few people at least who can see this. And one of the things I want to point out to you is this pump and dump they do lately at the selling pressure time. So I want you to notice there's a structural high right here, a pullback, and then a retest with a stop run. The same thing happens up here. There's a structural high, and then right before a pump and dump, and it drops down. Well, if you look to the right, you'll see that's actually taking place right now. We have the prior swing high right here. And do you notice that pump and dump right there? And now it's starting to fall away. When I see these kinds of patterns, everyone, I use what's called an exertion analysis. In essence, I measure how far did institutions push, or better yet, allow the market to fall from that high. And so here's an example. Before the first retracement, we have these two to work with. And now I'm going to harvest this one and put it up here. And I'll do the same thing. I'll harvest this one and put it up here. And so we have this idea that the markets have the potential now to drop until 923 down to as low as 2860 quarter, it looks like, here on the E-mini S&P, if that cycle continues to drop down. So minimally, we're looking at a pullback into the higher low here, down at the 2900s and those tens and single digits, if they follow through. What's bizarre, though, again, keep this in mind, all of this geometry, these signals oscillating positive, negative, I want you to notice that gap doesn't change. As far back as we go, the distance between those signals, because we're subdividing them over and over again, it doesn't change. And so we have the same old pattern 4s and 5s along the way. But you notice what happens, generally speaking, around those red dots when we're near a high? You see how it kind of pulls back and goes the other way? So coming into a red dot from above, like this one here, there's always a significant retracement. When we come into it, into a low, which is a pattern 4, these 3 signals right here are all pattern 4s. It inverts and goes the other way. When there's a green dot at the higher high, either the candle to the left or the right, there's an inversion and it goes down. So we see those same patterns playing out over here. Pattern 4 at the low, a pattern 5 at the high, but they didn't come down. And again, this tells me that somebody is pumping this market. This whole area up here is unnatural, artificial. And so I just want you to be careful, especially if you're an investor looking at this market right now. The natural rhythm was upset, pushing into this high, and they're doing it again, pushing into that stop run. So keep a close eye on that. But if you want more information about the solar indicator, I've got a link to the weekly webinar down below in the description, as well as a link to our video demo if you'd like to learn more about the software and how we know when to anticipate these dates. So for example, you can see it's about 17 days until the next green signal. So that's about as much time as we're watching for this next retracement to pull down, 17 calendar days from now. Today's date, by the way, if you're watching it the first day, is July 17th. So there you go. Thanks again. We'll continue to create new content. If you like what you're seeing, if you have questions, please leave them below in the comments. We will get back to you. And you can always give me a shout, Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, at backtothefuturetrading.com. Thanks, everybody.